Hello, hello, and welcome back to Roots and Branches Adoption Stories on K-Fred Radio. I'm Janet Monroe, and I'm your host. In our last episode, we began hearing the deeply complex and emotional story of Sam Moore. A story marked by abuse, poverty, instability, and a system that at times failed to fully protect her. We heard about her early childhood, her family, and the events that led into her foster care and eventually into an adoptive home that brought its own challenges. But that was only part of her journey, because where we left off, Sam was a teenager, overwhelmed, unsupported, and carrying more than any young person should ever have to carry. Today we continue her story, a story that is heartbreaking and gut-wrenching. But as we continue, we begin to understand not only what she survived, but how those experiences shaped the path that she followed. At this point, I would like to add that this episode reflects Sam's personal experiences, her memories, and her perspectives. All views expressed are her own. Sam, welcome back. It's so good to see you again. And I'm glad we're having this opportunity to continue our conversation.
Me too. I'm really glad to be back. And again, thank you to K-Fred and the rest of your audience and viewers for just creating a space and an opportunity for me to share my story.
Okay, there was a couple of things that we said before. We talked about your family and what happened to you from the first time you were in foster care and then to the second time that you were in foster care and became adopted. But when it got to that really traumatic point in your life where life wasn't worth living, you had mentioned that you were sexually active and that you thought you were pregnant at the time. What was the result of that? Where you were?
No, so it turned out it was a false positive. And so like when I had committed my arson charge, when I tried to kill myself, whatever you want to call it, right? I actually went to the hospital and they did blood work tests and everything. And they were like, well, we can tell your mom. And I'm like, no, please don't. Like, don't tell her anything. Just do the test. I'm not giving any kind of HIPAA like disclosure to tell her my medical information. And so that when they did the tests and everything, that's when I found out I was a false positive. And the nurses that I had talked to said that can happen sometimes if you take like expired pregnancy tests, or sometimes like your hormones can fluctuate and it can like trick your body into giving a pregnancy, but not really actually be pregnant.
So that was a relief.
Yeah, a huge relief. It was kind of one of those things where it was like the day after it had happened, I like woke up and I was like, oh my gosh, that really did happen. I really did do that. And so then it was kind of like this whole thing of like, did it really happen? Did it not happen? Like, am I just like imagining these things? It's kind of weird how your brain operates when it's in that level of crisis. And then when the crisis is over, your body's just so overwhelmed with hormones and all of the other things that it makes it really hard to like logically come and put all of the pieces together.
Okay. And the other thing that I wanted to ask you was that with your adoption, was that what they call a closed adoption or an open adoption? Did you still get to see your mom or?
Yeah, so it was technically considered a closed adoption, but my adoptive parents allowed my birth mother to have contact with us. And that was part of the agreement for her to sign over her rights, was that they were going to maintain contact with my birth mother and like allow us to continue to see our siblings and all of those other things.
Okay. All right. So because I'm talking to people about difference between open and closed adoptions, and I'm thinking of doing an episode based on that. So at that time, we'll call you back in to talk more about that. Yeah. All right. So let's go back because we're starting today actually when you are in the detention center and you were in solitary confinement. So tell your story from there.
So, so after I was released from Intermountain Hospital, they had charged me with arson, or they charged me with arson before I was released. And so, like I was saying before, I don't really know what happened, that they went from we're not going to charge you. We're going to release you back to foster care to you're now being tried as an adult. But when I went from where I was at the mental hospital, State Hospital South, to the Southwest Juvenile Detention Center in Canyon County, I spent about 2 to 3 months in solitary confinement. And part of it had to do with your Macy scores. So here in the state of Idaho, when you go into a detention, they have you take a Macy test. It might be called something different now, but it's something that registers like how traumatized you are, so staff can provide you additional services. But for me, I was put like on the highest scale of the Macy rating, and they put me in one of the watch rooms, which is a room that has a camera in it, 24-hour camera. There's a sticker that covers the toilet. And I was there for 2 to 3 months, probably no more than 4 months. And like, just for like a lot of people who don't know, solitary confinement to that level was federally illegal under the Obama administration. It's actually prolonged forms of isolation like that are actually considered a form of torture. And if you look at World War II prisoner of war camps, you'll actually see that isolation was one of the tools that the Japanese used to break American soldiers. So when you put it in the perspective of like, I was a 16-year-old girl who was 15, 16 years old, extremely traumatized, was somebody who literally fell through every single gap that every single system in place could come up with. And so it was really just a sitting and a waiting game. Like, I did whatever I could to not go crazy. I was working out. I read the Bible from front to back because that's the only thing they can't deny you is your religious texts and your religious rights under the First Amendment. It was hard. Like, the room that I was in, it was really small, and there were 4 glass, like, frosted windows. And that was like the only way how I would get sunshine most of the time. It was secondhand sunshine through a frosted glass window. And when I had gotten out of solitary confinement, I can be honest, like, I was just a very different person. I didn't talk to anybody unless they talked to me. I couldn't deal with any form of like social interactions. It would give me anxiety. It got to the point where like I couldn't be around other people because I felt like I was going to get in trouble, and it felt like there was like never really any significant explanation as to why I was put through something that violated my 8th Amendment's right to be free of cruel and unusual punishment.
Okay, so then you came out of solitary confinement, and then you went to where?
So I was with the general population at the detention center, which I think is super messed up because I was in there with another person who was in there for sexually assaulting other kids, including some of his siblings. And I spent more time in solitary confinement than that guy did. Just to put it into perspective. So I spent about 14 months in detention. Before I was sentenced. And like, shout out to the Honorable Juvenile Carrick, because honestly, like, she was on like so pivotal in just everything. Like, she created the crossroads for me to be who I wanted to be instead of the person who I was molded to be. So when I was going through the justice system and everything, she had given me an opportunity to essentially waive my right to a speedy trial so I could be resentenced under new laws that had passed in like 2016. So I had to wait until 2017, July of 2017, to be sentenced. And if I had waived that right to the speedy trial, I would be allowed to go to the Department of Juvenile Corrections under the Idaho Juvenile Corrections Act, and I would be able to go there to get rehabilitated instead of doing a 5-year fix, 15-year maximum at the Women's Pocatello prison here in Idaho. And so it was really crazy, for one, because like everybody's like, wow, and it's crazy because I was actually the first kid in the state of Idaho, the entire state of Idaho, to be given this provision. To benefit from this change in the law. And so for me, it was just a really crazy experience because like, it didn't feel like they were helping me. It didn't feel like I was going to get any kind of help. And for me, I think the most like brutal part of like just going to corrections and everything was when I was being sentenced and my judge like point blank saying that if we had any other community placement, that's where I would be sending you. But because we have nowhere else to send you that can give you the help you need, you're going to go to corrections. Um, and so, like, in a lot of places, like in Idaho, justice by geography is a real thing where people in super rural counties don't get as many opportunities as those in urban areas. And so, like, it's something that when we talk about the justice system, it's very convoluted and complex. And it's because of reasons like that. There's a lack of resources, there's a lack of availability in community placements, there's a lack of funding and continuous funding to prevention programs. Right. And so, for me, um, when I had gotten to that point, it was really weird because I had to be like unbrainwashed. And that sounds weird, but it took the judge saying, like, let's have a recess. My public defender was like, I can't make you accept this plea deal, but please, like, listen to me, take the deal, take the agreement, like, don't be doing the things that you're thinking of. Cause like I was in this mentality because like my adoptive mom had tricked me and like I'm this bad person. All of these terrible things happened because of me. Like I went through two families and nobody could love me the way I needed to be loved. Right. And it does a lot of psychological damage when you have somebody who you trust like a mom telling you these things. And so it was a different level of wanting to punish myself, but also wanting to not be punished at the same time. And so it was really interesting because like at my sentencing, I took the plea agreement like to go to the Department of Juvenile Corrections. And for a lot of people who don't know this, when you get sentenced, there's often a portion called the victim impact statement where the people who you victimized are allowed to share, like their thoughts, their sentiments, their beliefs with the judge. And it can impact your sentence. And so for me, my adoptive parents really just showed their true colors. And them acting the way that they did during the victim impact portion actually benefited me in the long run. Because it proved beyond a reasonable doubt how abusive the household was. My adoptive dad threatened to put me down like a rabid animal. I was called every single name in the book to the point that the staff who was in charge of transporting me from the juvenile detention to the court's house where I was at because I was tried as an adult. He felt bad for me. And Alan doesn't feel bad about anyone. And he's one of those people like you put yourself in this situation, but he felt bad for me to the point that he went and he told all of the other staff, and I had staff checking on me almost every hour, every couple of hours because of how brutal that was.
Then how long did you stay there?
So I was in total, I think in Southwest detention, about 14 to 17 months, something like that.
And how was life in there? How did they treat you? Did you have schooling? Were you educated, or what happened
Yeah.
to you?
So great question. So the detention I was at, for the most part, it was pretty good. I think like the staff there actually really did try to do a lot of things, like to take me out and to have more like one-on-one time and to be out in the sunshine and stuff like that. It's actually really crazy because I actually visit the facility I was at in detention, and every now and then, like the staff, they'll recognize me and they'll be like, "Holy crap, it's you! We knew you were gonna make it. You were the one. We know." So it's really, yeah. But so the staff were really awesome in a lot of ways. Like they tried really hard to provide programming, like rehabilitative based programming. But it's really different here in Idaho because we're bifurcated. So that means that the counties operate their own jails, their probation systems, all of that. It's not regulated by the state. And so every detention kind of operates differently. Canyon County, a lot of the food there is inedible. Being completely honest, it's actually made by inmates at the adult jail. And there were plenty of times where I actually, like, the food was completely inedible. Like, you could not eat it because either the food was undercooked or it was so burnt that it was not edible. And there were plenty of times where, like, we ate peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for dinner because that was what they had. There were just a lot of other just issues there with when it came to like food and nutrition. There was actually one young man who I was serving time with. I actually still hang out with, like, still know his family, and we still talk and stuff like that. But he's like 6 foot tall, like literally 275 pounds of like solid muscle. And this kid lost like probably 40 to 50 pounds in detention, and they still would not put him on a special diet so he could eat more or anything else like that. Um, and like in other ways, like education, kind of going to that question, education is very individualized. So like how it works, at least at the detention center I was at, is they actually have a school that they are accredited through, and I think that's through Caldwell High School. So the detention center I went to, the education was very individualized. They were connected to a school system. I think it was the Caldwell High School, but I could be wrong. It could have been an alternative high school. And you would do like your coursework there, and there would be a teacher that would be there to help you, but everybody else was like in different courses. There was like, I think the youth that were there, it ranged anywhere from like 6th, 7th grade math all the way to like calculus 2. Because I was in pre-calc, and there was one kid who I know he was in calculus. He was super smart, but and like it's based off of the what is it called, the course too. So like we had a couple different teachers. Like at the one I was at, I think we had technically 2 different teachers and 1 teaching assistant. And they helped with reading, writing, math, all of those basic things. I feel like I received a pretty good education while incarcerated, in the aspect that like I read a lot of original classic literature, mostly because I was bored, right? But I mean, how many people can say that they've read The Count of Monte Cristo? How many people can say that they have read Machiavelli's The Prince? How many people can say that they can understand like The Art of War? And all of these things were supplementary aspects of education that I requested of those teachers. Like in high school, that's unheard of. So in certain ways, like it was very like materially beneficial, but in other ways it was also very harmful. The detention though that I was at, like I would not recommend solitary confinement, but if I was like a minor again, I would not mind going back to that detention center. And I know that sounds super weird, but
If you had a choice, that's the one that you would choose.
well,
What would
okay,
you
so
say?
if I had a choice, it would be Ada County because they have good food. They make bread from scratch. They have a garden, all the works. Ada County is the juvenile detention center you want to go to.
Okay, so if you were talking to someone today who's going through a similar thing that you went through, what would you tell them?
Great question. Um, Firstly, it would be don't let somebody or a system gaslight you when you know you're telling the truth, when you know what you have lived through. I think the hardest part for me in my struggle in my story is the fact that for almost 10 years, so I'm almost 30 now, the Department of Health and Welfare here in the state of Idaho has protected my abusers. To the point that even in, I believe it was in 2022, there were allegations that my adoptive mom was still drugging and abusing foster kids under the age of 6, and was using like medication to make them more compliant. And DHW never investigated. And I have that on recording if anybody like. I really want DHW to call me a liar so I could be like, oh, but what's this? So I think for me, it's one of those things where like I spent so much of my life proving I lived through what I lived through, going through what I went through because it wasn't fair and it wasn't right. And for me, like I'm doing all of this work on the back end so that way other people don't ever have to go through the same experience as I did, where if the state messes up and they put foster kids in abusive homes, I am working really hard with other advocates across the state to push legislation so that way those children can have mitigating factors, and to create other protections for foster youth who are being abused, particularly by foster or adoptive parents.
So you got out of detention center when you were 19?
Yeah, so I went from detention to corrections, and I was in corrections for about a year.
And
Um,
then at 19 you were released?
yeah, and I went to a halfway house.
And then what did you do? How did life continue from that point on?
Yeah, great question. I'd like to point out, though, here in this, that there was a lot of traumatizing things that happened while I was incarcerated, and while I was in the halfway house that made transitioning a lot harder. So there was a buried PREA complaint at the facility I was at. It's Prison Rape Elimination Act, and we had somebody who, like, they did this whole thing like 6 months in advance, saying that they were going to falsely claim to be trans so they could get access to the girls, because the girls on our side, we got treated better and all of these things. And then when they were there, this person's parents had threatened to sue the state and to bring in like trans activists from Portland to sue the state. And so, like, the facility was like, oh, well, we'll just let you go to the girl side. And this person, like, molested a few of our group mates. And when we filed PREA complaints, the facility completely buried it. April Horak, or no, April Horak. Yeah, that's her name. She's been married now. I don't know what her married name is, but she went so far as to say that, like, we were transphobic and that we should be ashamed of ourselves for not accepting this person because they were claiming to be trans. But that wasn't the issue that we had. The issue was that this person would touch us with their fully erect penis across our, like, our rear ends or on our thighs or different parts of our body. And in any other circumstance, that would be assault. That would be a form of sexual assault on the outside. So why is it different? Because we're in detention. So there were a lot of issues like that inside. And then when I transferred to a reentry home, it was called Empowerment, and it was ran by Bobby Aitchison. And she was probably one of the most abusive people I have ever met in my life. She's like 60, 70 years old, and she would antagonize the youth to the point that, like, kids would swing at her, and that was her whole entire thing. Because if the kids got charged or if they went back to jail or they couldn't pass the program, she would get more money, because of how their contract with the state was written. Um, and so I don't know if that was the case or if it just happened to be like she just, at old age, it kind of really impacted how she acts cognitively. But she was like, just to put it into perspective of some of the things that she would do, she turned her garage into a studio apartment, and then she would let the girls be in that studio apartment, the girls who were in her transition program. And she would, like, come into the unit at like 3 o'clock in the morning, pull us out of bed and make us clean either her house, make us clean the unit. We'd have to clean her gutters or her dishes. She would make us do all sorts of crazy stuff, like 3 o'clock in the morning. There's other times where she would get, like, right in our face within, like, this, like, literally this far apart from our face and be like, oh, do you want to hit me? Go ahead and hit me. I would love for you to hit me. And she would just do all of this stuff that, like, it didn't make any logical sense. Um, and to, and within the span of, I think, like 45 days, we actually had three kids, three adults, I should say, from the ages of 18 to, I think, 21 commit suicide. From how abusive the environment was. And so it took a while for the state to investigate. And that's the fact that, like, during Snowmageddon, when we had that crazy snowstorm across the country and the world, I was being forced to go out in the snow and walk. Through that, the independent living provider, she wouldn't transport me to and from appointments. And if I missed those appointments, it would look bad on my programming, and I would be the one in trouble at the end of the day. So there were a lot of different things in there that happened that should not have happened. And that's also how I found out how, like, the Department of Juvenile Corrections hires pedophiles. So Officer Julie McCormick, she was actually somebody in Juvenile Correction Center Nampa who was criminally convicted of sexually abusing boys in that prison. And they decided to rehire her in the financial department. So Officer McCormick, right? So there's like I say, a lot of problems. When I start talking more, everybody's like, "Oh my goodness." And so after all of these things had happened, I was moved from empowerment to a different contract provider called PBS. It's called Progressive Behavioral Systems. And it was not a good fit reentry wise. Like, this program was for people who were developmentally delayed or disabled, or who would need long-term assistance to do basic things. So going back to the progressive behavioral system. So when I got out of that program, I was actually homeless, because they did not make sure that any of the places that I was staying at, that they would allow me to live there with my felony, or anything else. So it was kind of like a really crazy situation, because despite, having all of these connections, having all of these people with like their metaphorical fingers in my case, from quality and control to my JSC, to my probation and parole officer, to all of these people, right? And it didn't matter, because I still fell through the gaps. And I was actually ordered to go into a homeless shelter. And I was like, man, this isn't fair. Like, why am I having to do all of these? Like, why do I have all of this crap going on? You guys messed up on this. You guys messed up several times, but here I am having to pick up all of the pieces, and it's cool, I guess. Apparently that's just how the system works, right? And this was as I was being released and dealing with all of this stuff. And had it not been for a mentor that I was connected with, Valerie Delier of the Restorative Implementations of Idaho, I probably would not be where I'm at. She actually went to the Department of Juvenile Corrections and asked if they were okay with me living there, all of this stuff, because she had a contract with the state to mentor me, and there's like conflicts of interest and all of this stuff. The person who she asked was not somebody who was the person to give permission. Like, they could not give that permission, right? So even though they got a yes from somebody high up within the Department of Juvenile Corrections, it was still something that cost her contract, essentially. So she lost all of her income for giving me a place to stay. And she, like, even through all of this, like, she never once, like, was angry at me or like viewed me as a burden. And she would always say, Sam, I don't want you to feel bad because I lost the mentoring gig. It's not a big deal. I'm going to find another job. That's just how the way the world works. Like, you're worth it, though. You are worth every single penny. I don't know what you're going to do yet, but I know, like, in the future, you're going to do good things. And those good things are going to come from people, like, being compassionate to you now. And so I, like, if it had not been for Valerie and her family, I don't know really where I would be with my life, because her family really helped me reenter society, whether it was like giving me a place to stay, like helping me cook, talking to me about certain things. But then there were other aspects of it, like her daughter Susan actually helped me get into advocacy spaces here in the state. She helped me get onto the Idaho Juvenile Justice Commission. I was appointed under previous Governor Otter twice, and then under Governor Little before I was booted off from the Juvenile Justice Commission under very sketchy pretenses, to say the least. And so it's definitely, it's interesting, kind of like seeing it come back full circle. And so, like, really, that's how it was. And I can say honestly, since I've been out of prison, like, I've always been in a situation where, like, when I needed a hand up, there was a hand up. And if not, then I could figure it out based off of the resources that I had. But for the most part, like, I'm just very grateful to Valerie and to her family, and just a lot of the people who really just tried to help me, even when, like, their hands were tied and they couldn't. So,
how did you end up getting your college education?
Great question. So that was actually something Valerie pushed me into, because she's all like, Sam, you're too smart to not go to college. Like, I've never met somebody who just writes physics formulas just for fun, or wants to learn how light reflects through, like, water molecules in the air. Like, that's just not normal stuff that people want to learn. But it's stuff that's super interesting to me. I think physics is really, I don't understand it whatsoever, but I think it's super cool. But for me, that was really how I got pushed into college. And I don't mean like I was like pushed like forcefully, but it was more of like a supportive nudging of like, hey, you're going to do great. This is going to be good for you. Like, go and be with other monkeys of your own kind. Go find your other like cartoon nerds and all of that stuff. And so it, like I said, it worked for the most part. It worked out. It's taken me 6 years to get a 2-year degree, but a lot of that has been just due to just stuff that I can't control. I couldn't control the COVID pandemic. I could not control the fact that I had a sibling who had kids in foster care, and they had contacted me stating that they needed help, and I was like, okay, like whatever I got to do, I'll do what I got to do. And that meant dropping out of school at times. It meant, working 2 jobs. It meant doing a lot of things to try and help the sibling out. And so it's really been interesting. So I'm hoping that this semester I'll finally be done with my associates.
How did you get into the job market? Was that difficult when you were
Great
released?
question. Absolutely. It was 100% difficult. Like, pro tip to everybody who has like a serious felony, hotels will hire you. It doesn't matter what kind of charge you have. If you have a sex offense charge, if you have an arson, if you have any kind of charge, they will work with you like 9 times out of 10. If you have any offenses where like they can't trust you to be around guests, you'll usually be in the laundry room, but that's not a bad gig. Laundry room is preferred to housekeeping. But it was very difficult. There were a lot of places where I couldn't get a job. They wanted you to be out of the facility for 5 years, or it had to be 5 years from your conviction date. And this is like warehouse jobs. This is Walmart. This is Trader Joe's. This is like every place. Even staffing agencies had a hard time getting me jobs. So it was really a lot of what I did was fast food. It was construction. It was gig jobs like Uber, DoorDash, stuff like that. And then I want to say it was 2021, I was offered a job with the Coalition for Juvenile Justice as the Youth Partnership and Training Associate, and I worked there for 2 years. And that really gave me a lot of the skills and knowledge and stuff to do the things that I'm doing now. I would never support the organization. It was actually really crazy because when I was an employee there, the former executive director, her name's Naomi Smoot Evans. She goes by Naomi Evans now. Last I heard, she works for the Office of Justice Programs, but she actually falsified financial records with the Coalition of Juvenile Justice while I was there and exploited me. It's kind of crazy. So I was, at one point in time during my pregnancy, when I was an employee there, I was homeless through no fault of my own. We got new landlords. It's a whole crazy situation. And to make a really long, complicated story short, Naomi lied to me, stating that she was giving me a personal loan that I had to pay back, and I made payments on it. I paid about half of it back, only to find out that this money that she gave me was actually an employee benefit. So an employee benefit payment. So I never had to pay any of the money back. And on top of that, I was taxed on it. So like this $500 loan that she gave me, it wasn't a loan. It was an employee benefit. It's recorded that way on my W-2. If you look at their PayPal records, you'll see that I put that I was paying the company back for the loan that they had given me, because that's what I was told. And so like, there's just a lot of other things within that organization, that I wouldn't support them after, but, I'm very grateful for the experiences that I learned, and for a lot of the people that I got to meet. I was really disappointed in a lot of the advocates or people who claim to be advocates, but, no, so employment was really hard. I recommend staffing agencies though. A lot of the biggest issues I had were around housing and employment. But if you, there are a lot of different landlords. At least there's a lot more now that actually work with people who have criminal backgrounds and felonies, versus back when I was getting out. Currently my landlord, he knows I have an arson charge. We kind of talked about it and did a bunch of other stuff to make him feel better about renting to me. But there are people out there who will give you a chance. You just have to be willing to put the work in. And this was something like that really helped to change my perspective when I first got out of prison was like, you did something really bad that was really terrible that most people have never done or ever thought of doing. And even though you did your time, you paid your debt to society, and you could say you're sorry, you can mean you're sorry, but that doesn't mean that the rest of society has to treat you as if you're like somebody who's a safe person, right? There's like a bit of trust that you have to earn back from people in that, even if you don't know them. And so I generally think that like it's a lot of different moving parts, but if you're willing to put the work in, if you're willing to really try, you can find a way to make it work. It really is. Where there's a will, there's a way, and it's really just how you navigate resources and how you talk and deal with people. Because I can tell you, like, most of the people I've worked with, they helped me get contracts or stuff like that, and most of the people, they've never even worked with me. It's just because I hung out with them one time at a conference, and they were like, we loved you, your energy, your personality, everything is awesome, we definitely want to work with you. So it's just kind of those different things like that.
What changes are most urgently needed in the juvenile justice and child welfare system that you see?
Oh, that's a great question. So I'll start with Idaho and then go nationally. So Idaho, we actually passed a bunch of really dangerous legislation. And I personally feel like this was foster parents clout chasing rather than them actually caring and advocating for foster kids. So we actually had an incident here in the state of Idaho where a young child died. He was 12 days old when he died. And child welfare should have been involved. There was a lot of things that, didn't happen, and this poor baby died as a result of it. And a lot of people have been pushing around these laws called Isaiah's laws, Benji's laws, their foster kid protection laws. And that's how they're being marketed. But in reality, they are going to strip parents of their God-given rights with their children when it comes to your 4th and 14th Amendment. So in America, when we talk about parental rights, that's protected under the 4th and 14th Amendment in the United States. And when these bills were passed, Senate 1257, which is, I believe that one's Isaiah's law, it actually creates specific provisions. So that way, if you have an administrative substantiation of child abuse, in other words, the department, not a judge, not somebody who knows the laws of the state of Idaho, who's been an attorney, has gone through all of these processes and looked at all of the evidence and proven beyond a reasonable shadow of a doubt abuse occurred, right? And administration is not that. It is an opinion. Right. And it's very important to state that there is some evidence and stuff like that, but the burden of proof is so different from an administrative substantiation versus a judicial. And under this law, the administrative substantiations would actually be enough to separate you from your child. So let's say I am falsely or erroneously accused of abusing my daughter, and I am incarcerated as a result of that, which happens. About 80% of Idahoans cannot afford adequate legal representation, and our public defender system is currently being gutted right now as a result of budget cuts. And so the average person, their court case can take anywhere from 24 plus months, over 2 years, to get seen, right? And to go through this process of, did you abuse your kid? Did you not abuse your kid? Right? But in the meantime, because of this law that was passed, Senate Bill 1257, the foster parents can petition the state to terminate your rights, even if your child was illegally separated from you, even if they were illegally placed with the foster parents, and they can do that based off of the positive attachment that the foster parents built with your child while they were illegally separated from you. And I don't think that's right. I don't think that there is any law in the books that should be written so that way there is no way to undo what has been done. In the state of Idaho, termination of parental rights, there is no undoing that. It is done. It is a final conversation. It doesn't matter if you get adopted by the family that you terminated your rights. It is done. There's no way to undo that. So if we have people, and we currently actually have a class action against the state of Idaho currently over false and erroneous administrative substantiations that never should have occurred. And we currently have Idahoan families who have been ripped apart from false administrations and from false administrative substantiation. And this really just creates a situation where if you are falsely accused and you're poor and it takes over 2 years to get seen by the court, you more than likely will lose your child. There's a lot of other bills there were 2 other bills that were pushed as a part of this. One of the other legislation, I can't remember what the piece of legislation is, but it essentially makes it so that way all the foster parents and like the department have to post the rules and the rights that kids are allowed, that kids are entitled to under the law in their home, which sounds great, right, in paper. But I can tell you, as somebody who's lived in a facilities where the rules were written on a giant movie poster, right? It was framed, everything super high up where everybody could read it. Staff abused that a lot. Staff abused the grievance system. And there were plenty of times where I filed grievances over my rights being violated, over valid court orders being violated, over violations of my civil rights, over violations of the Constitution, all sorts of stuff. And I was repeatedly threatened by several different staff stating unequivocally that if I do not sign this grievance, then I will not be leaving this room. And if I miss programs, I'll be marked as out of compliance, and they will write a letter to my judge saying that I'm refusing programming. And if I go to adult prison after that, that's on me, not on them. But like, but kind of going back to this bill about like the rules and stuff being posted, it's dangerous because children do not have the capacity to articulate what their rights are and how you are violating their rights. Like, you can be the smartest 15, 16, 17-year-old you are, but it doesn't change the fact that like you don't know what you do not know, right? So if you are an 8-year-old and you believe your rights are being violated, you can now fill out this piece of paper, but you're an 8-year-old kid, and the chances are an adult who works with the Department of Health and Welfare is going to know how to better weaponize those policies against you to invalidate the grievance, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does.
And then, like, just going on to a federal perspective, honestly, I think that the way that we do child welfare in this country is very backwards. First off, like, if I was the president, if I was Alex Adams at the head of ACFS or any of those other administrations, the very first thing I would do is I would make it so that way no person could exploit the federal loophole, the loophole in the federal background check process like my adopted mom did. That's the very first thing I would do. I would make policies and provisions so that way people had to double check names, double check birth certificates, double check social security cards to ensure that this person is who they are claiming to be and that all of the paperwork is submitted correctly so people can't bypass that error or that loophole. Secondarily, I would also make a lot of changes to how we classify foster parents. And then federally, so going back to those changes, I would actually make a lot of changes so that way we could change who are foster parents and how we determine who should be foster parents. And by that, I mean, I think that there needs to be changes in what constitutes a disqualifying offense and what doesn't. And then I also think that there needs to be a lot more clarification really on like clarification or like a process where we could actually hire former foster youth or have like some kind of mentorship program nationally where former foster youth can work with current foster youth, or have like a big brothers big sister campaign, but more geared towards foster youth, recognizing that the struggles that we have are so very different to the general population. Most people don't know what it's like to have all of their belongings fit in a trash bag. Most people don't know what it's like to live your entire life on the basis of a phone call. If you get that phone call that you're being moved, and it doesn't matter how much you love your foster parents, you're moved. You know, and there's a lot of things like that it adds a lot of secondary and tertiary trauma to foster kids, to foster parents. And it's really just providing those resources and those supports so that way parents can have like a counselor on call to like deal with crisis, right? Maybe it's behavior coaches and stuff like that that we could connect foster parents with, so that way if their kids are having issues, they have somebody who can help coach them through like how do you help kids regulate when they're this traumatized, when they're this dysfunctional, coming from a lot of different chaos in their family. So those are just a few things off like the top of my head.
There's lots there that you're working with, right?
Yeah, no, I have tons. Like I could talk all day about this. Most people are like, okay, Sam, we get it. I'm like, yeah, I know, I got all the ideas. One day if I'm the president.
You can change the world.
Huzzah.
What do you want other struggling children to hear from you?
Yeah. I think for me, what I desperately needed as a kid was that one person. It didn't even need to be an adult, but it was just somebody who believed in me, somebody who supported me, somebody who loved me the way I wanted to be loved. And for like a lot of the people out there who are hurting and that resonates with, like, you will find that person. And it may not be when you're a kid, it may not be like the adult that you wish some would come and rescue you. But I think that, you know, when you grow up, you have the opportunity to be the person that you desperately needed. And like just saying that from the perspective of like being able to help other foster kids, mentoring other foster kids, doing a lot of things that I never thought I'd be able to do because of my felony. Like it's a very rewarding experience. And it's one of those things where like it's hard putting in the hard work because you don't know what is at the end of that journey. You don't know what you're going to need to feel happy or to feel complete or to feel healed or to feel like you're finally enough. And that's okay. It's honestly, it really is okay. And it's just a matter of living life day by day and figuring out what you need to do today, what you want to do, and what you're building to, and just going from there.
What is your relationship with family like today, with your family?
Yeah, great question. So I have no contact with my adoptive family. There is a no contact order, so I have limited communications with my brothers, and by that I mean every now and then they'll text me or they'll email me or they will message my mom saying, "Oh, hey, I'm doing good. Tell Ida I love her." Blah 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 blah. Um, so it's usually like them passing me information, if that makes sense. Or sometimes my mom will like she'll tell me like how my brothers and stuff are doing. For the most part, though, the rest of my family relationships are pretty good now, which is like crazy because I never would have thought that like we would get to a point where I would actually enjoy being around my family or my family would enjoy being around me. I'm just very different from a lot of my family. A lot of my family are like mechanics and stuff, so it's kind of weird being like in a non-mechanic-y setting professionally, right? But it's really just that.
Your younger brothers are over 18 now, though, right?
Yeah, but so as part of when I was going through the justice system, my adoptive mom had requested a no contact order, and because they were children at the time of the crime, my adoptive mom had it extend to them, and then when I went to court, when I was being released, they extended it indefinitely. So my two younger brothers, if they wanted to, like stay, like wanted to have a relationship with me or stuff like that, they would actually have to go, which I also think is a really dumb thing, but they would have to go and take a course and on a safety planning and all of this other stuff, so the court could petition, or so that way I could then petition the court to remove the no contact order with my two brothers. But it's crazy because this, and mind you, this is the same court that I have now proven I was illegally adopted in. I was horrifically abused. I had violations of my Eighth Amendment rights and nothing. So it's kind of funny how that works.
But you have a daughter today?
Yes, I do have a daughter. She's going to be 4 here in 4 months, and that's like super crazy to think of. And I'm a single mom. Just recently I split up with my partner. It's just issues, stuff like that. And like when you're in a meaningful relationship with people, like that both people have to grow, and if both people are not growing, then one is going to hold you back. And so that's kind of the, I wouldn't say the full situation that I was in, but it was something similar to that. Um, and so it's also really interesting having a daughter, because it's really, having kids, especially from being in foster care, it brings out a lot of the trauma in different ways. So like when I first had my daughter, I was terrified that CPS was going to come and remove her. Even though we weren't doing anything, I was terrified. Every single car, I would look at the license plate and I'm like, oh my God, is this a state license plate? Is this a state worker? And I'd be freaking out, like cleaning my house till like 4 o'clock in the morning, doing all sorts of stuff. Like, oh my God, what if they come in and they see my house and it's messy? Just like freaking out, right? Um, and I don't really know when. It was probably around like when my daughter was a year or two before I finally was like, I realized like there's no shoe that's gonna drop. Like CPS isn't just gonna come randomly and take my daughter. But that was like a very legitimate fear I had for a very, very long time. And it's because like a lot of members of my family, when we were impacted by the child welfare system, right? When parents had their kids taken away in my family, the parents were subjected to a lot of bias and unfair and unequal treatment that disproportionately impacted their case and their ability to get their kids back. And so like I know for me that bias will exist, that it doesn't matter what I do with my life. I will always be an adame. I will always be related to so and so, this, that, and the third. And because I am related to those people, I will never be given a fair chance. And that is very true in child welfare. And people can say that's not true. We give everybody a fair chance. We give everybody a fair chance, but that is not true. When my sister had, I have a sibling who had cancer, or who had cancerous cells, and despite disclosing this to caseworkers, despite disclosing this to the foster parents, despite talking to all of the people who were legally responsible for now updating the courts of these, they failed to do those. And those disclosures were mitigating for child welfare, right? If you have brain cancer, that really impacts your ability to cognitively think and do things, right? So it's not necessarily like a situation where the parents are always bad. Sometimes there really are extenuating circumstances, and parents really don't know. Like, you don't know you have cancer until you go to the doctor and you get screened. My sibling, the way how they found out they had cancer is they were in a horrible car accident where the car rolled 4 or 5 times and they were transported over to the hospital. And during x-rays, that's how they found it, is my understanding, right? And so when, like, so for that instance, like, it really just kind of, it really opened my eyes to the fact that you can try as hard as you can, but it doesn't matter if the department isn't going to acknowledge the fact that you're trying, is not going to acknowledge the fact that you're doing the things, or I think um, for me there was a lot of different things that kind of have to navigate through. And then also like there's this, like, my daughter's gonna be 4 this year, and that was like my age when I went into foster care. And I don't know how I feel about that quite yet. So there's like there's a lot that goes into it, and it's just it's really a long journey of being accepting of yourself, of being understanding of yourself, of like really just being like, I don't want to use the term radical acceptance, but just being able to be honest with yourself about the parts that are still hurting. Because if you can't be honest, then you can't heal and you can't move forward from life. And that's really just something that I found. Um, like when you have your own kids, like, you may get jealous because you're providing them a better life than what you had. But it's something that you really just have to put in the perspective of like, if you wouldn't treat your child poorly because these bad things happen to them, why are you doing that to yourself, right? Of like, if you don't love yourself because you made a mistake, if you don't love yourself because of the X, Y, and Z, like, if you had a kid and those things happened to your kid, you would still love them. So it's really just like a matter of like, how do you love yourself? How do you have self-compassion? How do you have a moment to just be like, oh, this is hurting. this really sucks. I'm going to sit in this pain. And when this pain has been felt, I'm going to move on, and I'm just going to try and do something else so I'm not stuck in that feeling.
Do you feel, after all this trauma that you've been through, that you have PTSD?
Oh yeah, without a doubt. I actually have been diagnosed with complex PTSD. There are certain aspects of like incarceration and stuff, like solitary confinement, like that really reshapes a person. And it sounds like crazy having not much time to yourself. You would think like, oh, that's amazing, I would love that. But it's different when you're devoid of all stimulus and everything else like that. It shapes and retwists your mind in ways that it shouldn't be. And like, I'll be honest, for a really long time as a young adult, I really thought that like it was really, and this is terrible to say that, but to say this, but it's like, because of a lot of the experiences that I had, I really didn't believe in the concept of justice or fairness or any of these like ideals that we believe are so central to America. Like, we're the land of the free, we're the home of the brave, unless you're a child in America, unless you're in foster care, right? And so for me, it was really difficult to like, one, acknowledge that I had those problems, but two, it was also like finding like care providers that can help with that. I have a level of trauma that is unprecedented in general populace. Like, when I say, I literally mean that I have literally the same like trauma score as somebody who's been in a war zone, or as somebody who has gone through other horrific experiences. I mean that, like, it's not normal. And when you go through those kinds of experiences, it really does reshape and twist your mind about the things that are right and wrong. And for me, it's really just a conversation of like, even if what I'm doing is, I don't know if it's right or wrong, it's just a conversation of like, my daughter is like my Jiminy Cricket. I think that's who Pinocchio had, who was like his conscience. And it's always like a question of like, the thing that I'm doing now, is it teaching my daughter the stuff that I want her to learn? Is it teaching her the things that she needs to know? Is it reinforcing those values that I'm trying to teach her?
What are you looking forward to for your future?
Oh, goodness. Great question. So I'm actually working on a lot of different projects right now with the company, with my business. So there's a few things that I'm really excited about. There is a collaborative partnership with this technology called Mental Verification Technologies. Shout out to Greg. And they actually do a lot of work with like law enforcement. So it's a technology that connects with dispatch, and we could go on the website, fill out the Safe Connect ID thing, and if we have any form of disability, behavioral mental health issues, or different things like that, we can fill out the Safe Connect ID, and we can actually share it, have that shared to law enforcement. So like, if you or like somebody you know is nonverbal, as an example, maybe they have like cerebral palsy, or they have an intense form of autism and it makes them nonverbal, you could fill out the secure ID, the Connect ID, I apologize, with your person's contact information. And then if they ever have the police called on them, that information will automatically be relayed to dispatch and first responders. So I'm super excited to roll that out and work with police departments on that project. I'm really hoping that it will actually help to reduce a lot of the police-related fatalities when it comes to behavioral mental health conditions. I'm also super excited because that comes with a few other tools. So it has like a built-in transient tracker to help keep data and help keep track of the transient populations. Recognizing that like, if we don't keep data, if we don't like actually check in on some of these most at-risk communities, we have no way of supporting them. We have no way of figuring out, the kinds of needs that they have, or any of those other things. Few other projects that we're working on that I'm super excited about is we have officially started hosting art galleries for this year's Through Their Eyes theme. So every year we work with colleges from across the state of Idaho And we have a few students from different states, from Florida, the District of Columbia, and Texas. And every year we raise awareness about different human trafficking related issues here in the state. And so this year's theme is exploitation in the digital age. And it's a conversation about how traffickers and sexual predators alike have changed their the tactics on how they try and recruit and entice young folks. So we talk a lot about like Roblox as an example, and why Roblox is being sued by the state of Louisiana and Texas. We talk a lot about AI generated child sexual abuse material, and just other resources and important things for parents to keep an eye out of, especially when we talk about like online safety, because there's so many scary things with the internet. Honestly, I feel like I was a little traumatized after doing research for this year's theme. There was some aspects of it that I was like, wow, this was definitely not where I thought we were going to go. But it's really interesting. If you've never heard of a cyber sex den, it's probably one of the scariest things online.
Can you tell people how they can reach you if they want to discuss further? Because you are such a wealth of knowledge on all subjects regarding the foster care and adoption.
Absolutely. So you can visit us at www.elevate-empire.com. You can email me at aid@elevate-empire.com. That's AIDE. Or you can give me a call or a text. My phone number is 208-801-1885. Texting is oftentimes the best way to get a hold of me, just because like at any given day, I'm getting about 12 to 300 different texts from my interns. So it really just kind of depends. But for the most part, yeah, I try really hard to be as approachable and to just share that and share as much information as we possibly can. And yeah.
Thank you very much, Sam. Really appreciate you being here today and continuing the story. And I see a very exciting future for you with all the changes that are coming and with what you're working with. So as we come to the end of the conversation today, I'm sitting with many emotions. We've got the sadness for that little girl who lived in fear. There's anger that the systems meant to protect sometimes fail the very children they are designed to serve. And I have a deep admiration for this woman who chose not to be defined by what was done to her. Sam's story reminds us that trauma does not simply disappear when a child is removed from danger. Safety is not just about a roof or a placement. Safety is about being seen, being heard, being believed. There are children today who feel trapped, children who believe there is no way out, and children who are carrying pain that no young heart should have to hold. If this episode reaches even one of them, if it reaches one foster parent or adopted parent, teacher, social worker, or policymaker, then Sam's courage in telling her story will matter in ways we may never fully know. Because survival is powerful. Using your survival to create change, that is extraordinary. Sam took the darkest chapters of her life and turned them into a mission. To sit at the tables where decisions are made, to speak for the children who are still finding their voices, and to help build a system that protects not just bodies, but hearts. Here at Roots and Branches, we believe every story has the power to heal, and the person who tells it and the person who hears it. If you have a story to share, we would love to hear from you. You can reach us through our website at www.rootsandbranchesadoptionstories.com, through our YouTube channel, or by phone at 615-870-6433. And if today's conversation has brought up difficult feelings for you, please remember you are not alone. There is help, there is hope, and there is always another chapter still to be written. Thank you for listening. Until next time, this is Janet Monroe at Roots and Branches on KFred Radio. Take care of yourselves and take care of each other.